This episode contains adult themes and is not appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, the world. This is They Will Kill, a true crime podcast. I'm Courtney Eck.
And I'm Sadie Eck.
And I don't know about you guys, but I am really excited to hear a true crime story. Sometimes when we record, I'm like, let's just get this over with so I can eat nachos. But tonight, I'm ready to settle in. I'm ready to see what you have for us.
Well, I wish I had some nachos for you also.
So, do you have any nacho-related murder?
No, but I'll see what I can do about it.
Cool.
Next time.
Great.
So I'm going to jump in.
Just jump in.
I'm going to do it. For this story, I relied heavily on two articles. One titled The Trials of Ed Graf by Jeremy Stahl, and another called The Victim of Circumstance by Dave Mann for the Texas Observer.
Great.
In 1983, Claire Bradburn was a single mother of two young boys, Joby, who is 6, and Jason, who was 5. She worked as a school teacher in Waco, Texas, and struggled to make ends meet. She felt her luck turn when she met Ed Graf. Ed was a banker, successful and handsome. He took to Claire's boys and seemed like a perfect match for the young mom. They dated for 7 months before deciding to get married. Claire and her boys moved to Ed's house, which is 505 Angel Fire Drive, and Ed was excited to adopt Claire's boys. At first they were happy. In the span of less than a year, Ed went from a single bachelor to a family man and seemed to take it in stride. He was involved in the boys' lives, taking them to daycare, cooking them meals, attending their t-ball games. But Ed and Claire's personalities struggled to mesh. Ed was meticulous and controlling. He kept his home incredibly clean. Everything had its place. He tracked the family's finances to the penny. Carried daily to-do lists in his shirt pocket, and even kept a notebook in his car that detailed the distances he drove and the mileages between oil changes.
I wish I was that person so badly. I am the complete opposite of that person.
Yeah, I wish I was just like 50% of that person. I don't want to be fully that person, but I could use a little bit more organization.
Full-blown type A. I just want to be one of those people that's got their shit dialed and like nobody else is as good as me at stuff.
I know.
I mean, I don't really either, but it's nice to fantasize about having things, organized in my life.
I know, for sure. As the newness wore off, he became strict with Joby and Jason. He felt like they were too rowdy and lacked discipline. He said they roughhoused too much.
Oh, buddy. How old were they again?
They were 5 and 6 when they met.
So little.
Right.
Oh, no.
Claire was more easygoing and less tidy. She felt the boys should have more fun than Ed would allow. The newlyweds started to fight often about these issues. Claire became pregnant in 1985. During this time, Claire learned that Ed had been fired from his banking job after allegedly embezzling more than $70,000 over 3 years from the local bank.
What? No way.
Yeah, from the local bank where he served as vice president.
Oh, no.
With the help of his parents and by cashing in his pension, he eventually paid the bank more than $75,000 to avoid prosecution.
He's so lucky he had that option. I don't feel like that's... they're like, well, you stole, you broke the law, but we'll put you on a payment plan.
Right, as long as you give it back to us, no big deal.
That's crazy.
After leaving the bank, Ed became a claims adjuster with State Farm Insurance. Claire gave birth to their third son, Ed III, in early 1986. In June, Ed took out a $50,000 life insurance policy on his son and stepsons.
Oh boy, here we go.
The policy said if the children died an accidental death, the amount would double. Tensions in the family grew. Ed became more controlling. Claire would call him, quote, the most possessive person I've ever known. He started to scare Jason and Joby and was even accused of beating the boys with a belt.
Oh no.
Claire started to think about leaving Ed and told him she wanted a separation. Ed told her he would never let her take their son away from him.
Hey.
2 weeks later, on August 26th, Claire was working late getting ready for the new school year to start. According to Ed, he left work early that day, picked up the boys from daycare, and arrived home just before 5 p.m. The boys went outside to play while Ed was inside the house with the baby. They had not been home for very long when neighbors alerted Ed to smoke coming from his backyard. His small tool shed was on fire. The fire spread quickly, flames tore through the shed and brought it to the ground in minutes. As the firefighters were putting out the fire, Ed realized that he had not seen Jason and Joby. Everyone started looking for the boys, but tragically, a firefighter discovered one of the boys' bodies in the shed.
No!
By the time Claire got the news and rushed home, the shed was a charred ruin. Ed met her in the garage. Her boys were gone, he told her. Gone where? She asked.
Oh my God.
She thought maybe they had run off somewhere.
Oh my God.
She would never forget the words that he said next. Quote, Claire, Joby and Jason are dead.
I just can't. That's just, I don't know.
Right. I just, as a mother of two boys, I can't go there. It's not going to go there.
Yep.
A moment later, a firefighter walked in to tell Ed that they had found a second body. The fire department had only told Ed of one death, though he had just told Claire that both boys were dead. An autopsy performed on Jason and Joby revealed that they had died of asphyxiation from smoke inhalation and severe burns. A second autopsy indicated that they were burned alive because of the amount of soot found in their throat and lungs.
Oh my God.
The pathologists also took note that the boys had high levels of carbon monoxide in their blood. Claire was immediately suspicious of Ed. He never tried to comfort her and wasn't sympathetic to her losing two of her children. He never apologized that they had died in his care. She wondered if he had set the fire intentionally. She left him the next day and went to stay with her family.
What is this with people committing a crime and then just not doing anything to act like they are remorseful or cover up the fact that they did it?
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry that your boys are dead. Do you still want to go to TGI Fridays? It's like, just pretend for at least 2 weeks minimum.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Something.
Yeah, give her a hug, draw her a bath, just fucking dig deep in your dark, charred little heart and figure out how to fake being a good person for 2 weeks.
Yep.
God.
As Claire tried to understand how this had happened, she started to remember things that seemed sort of odd leading up to the boy's death, but now seemed suspicious. Not only did Ed have life insurance policies on the boys that he cashed in right away, the policies had been mailed out the day before the fire. One day... I know. One day in early 1986, Claire's family remembered Ed, who had worked on arson investigations as an insurance agent, giving them a lesson about the elements of arson he had learned from his new job. How arson was among the most difficult crimes to solve because the fire burned up their own evidence. A few days before Jason and Joby died, Ed had insisted that the boys keep the price tags on the clothes the family bought for the new school year. After the fire, he returned the clothes for a refund.
My God.
Also, he was normally very meticulous and kept lists for everything, but neglected to buy the boys cereal or fill Jason's Dimetap prescription the week of their deaths.
Jesus.
Multiple witnesses said that they saw a gasoline container on the porch, not far from the kids' bikes. As they planned the children's funeral, Ed suggested the boys be buried in one coffin to save money.
What a bastard.
Yep. Definitely not a nice guy.
But he is really organized. So let's just give him credit where credit's due.
Claire's best friend and sister-in-law wrote a 6-page letter to the district attorney's office detailing their suspicions about Ed. With pressure from the family and the town buzzing about a gruesome murder, the county prosecutors began to build a criminal case. Prosecutors had motive and plenty of circumstantial evidence against Ed, but physical evidence was lacking. The crime scene had been destroyed just hours after the fire. Color photos were taken of the scene, and then firefighters bulldozed the shed and hauled it off to the dump as a favor to the family, so Claire and Ed wouldn't see its charred remains when they woke in the morning.
Just right away. Oh my God.
Yep. And it seemed like it was volunteer firefighters.
Oh no.
And they really thought they were just doing the family a favor. They don't want to have to see this in the morning.
Damn it.
So sad, I know. Which is a very nice thought and a very bad thought. Prosecutors brought in 2 arson experts, one from the Texas State Fire Marshal's office and a private expert from New York who used photographs of the scene to reconstruct how the blaze started. Both came to the conclusion that burn patterns on the shed floor indicated that someone had intentionally started the fire with an accelerant, probably gasoline.
I mean, to that I would say, no shit.
Yeah, but we also remember how inaccurate arson investigation
good
is.
Point. Good point. Mm-hmm. But we can pair that with the fact that this guy is a fucking monster. Write it on the report. Findings, this constable finds that this guy sucks and definitely did it.
Mm. Jason and Joby were found on their backs. The experts believed that they must have been unconscious at the time of the fire. Based off the scorch marks found around the door hinges, they thought it was likely that the door had been closed during the fire.
Mm-hmm.
A firefighter found the door latch to the shed and believed it was in the locked position. The shed latch could only be closed and locked from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
All that evidence, the expert said, meant Ed had knocked out his 2 young stepsons, dragged them into the shed, and then locked the door before setting the fire.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
I don't know. I really don't know. This was enough for the authorities. They arrested Ed and charged him with 2 counts of murder.
Good.
The trial began in April of 1988. The prosecution told the story of a man with 2 sides. He might appear to be a mild-mannered banker and insurance adjuster, but underneath he was controlling, jealous, and violent. Claire would testify that she and Ed were having marital problems and that she had planned to leave him. Ed couldn't stand his stepsons. They were getting in the way of his marriage, and he could profit off their death. So he locked them in the shed and let them burn to death. Defense attorneys offered explanations for Ed's behavior. He had just neglected to go food shopping. He wanted the kids to keep the tags on their shirts in case the clothes didn't fit. He believed the life insurance was a good investment. But prosecutors kept piling one small piece of suspicious circumstantial evidence on top of another to convince the jury that Ed had planned all along to kill his stepsons.
Mm-hmm.
The defense tried to blame the boys for starting the fire, painting them as rebellious children who loved to disobey and played with fire more than once. They claimed the boys snuck into the shed to experiment with fire and it got out of hand. Neighbors testified that they had seen Joby and Jason smoking cigarettes and playing with fire. A teacher at their school testified that she had caught them playing with matches in the schoolyard. 2 children who played with the brothers testified that the boys had started a small grass fire in a neighbor's yard a few months before their deaths. Prosecutors brought in 2 arson experts who came across as competent and explained the science behind arson investigations in a way the jury could understand easily. Defense attorneys tried to counter the forensic testimony. They brought in their own arson expert to dispute some, but not all of the physical evidence. The expert wasn't as polished or convincing. When both prosecution experts confidently testified that, without doubt, the crime of arson had been committed, the jury believed them. On April 28, 1988, after only 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Ed guilty of capital murder by arson. The jury sentenced him to life in prison.
And that's the end of the story, because he did it, right? The end.
Not this time.
What?
I know. As Ed sat in prison and the years passed, a few people stuck with him and believed in his innocence. They told anyone who would listen that Ed was actually a victim. He lost his stepsons he loved, lost his marriage and his family. They didn't have much evidence to back their claims, but as time passed, arson science has undergone a revolution. Scientific advances have undermined the key evidence that sent Ed to prison.
Mm-hmm.
The people who have insisted for so many years that he was innocent may have been right all along.
No way.
In 1992, Cameron Todd Willingham was convicted of murdering his 3 children by arson. He was then executed 11 years later.
Oh.
And that was the case that we talked about in our Patreon episode. If you want to know more, guys.
Get over there, $3.
After his execution, it was revealed publicly that the forensic evidence used to convict him was bunk, and it was very likely that Texas had executed an innocent man. After huge public outcry, Texas did something surprising. It reinvented itself as a leader in arson science and an investigation.
What? You mean they actually, fixed it?
Well, I sure tried. They're trying. A new fire marshal revamped the state's training and investigating standards. He also set up a panel of some of the top fire scientists in the country to reconsider old cases that had been improperly handled by the original investigators.
Wow.
Ed Graf's case was one of the first up for review, and it was determined that the original investigators had made critical mistakes. The biggest problem with the case was the lack of a crime scene. I mean, very problematic.
That's a helpful part of solving a crime.
Mm-hmm. When the investigator from the state fire marshal's office arrived, he had to visually examine the remains of the shed from above, looking down into a pit at the dump site.
What?
So they went to the dump, and the fire marshal, the guys were like, yeah, it's down there. And he was just like, I don't know. I didn't see pictures, but I'm picturing it to be very far away.
Oh my God. Like
it doesn't sound like
rock
he even
quarry.
it doesn't sound like he went down and like shuffled through the...
Oh my God. And I can't even
debris.
imagine just how impossible that would be to determine anything anyway.
Right.
Because it's a dump.
Well, and it's been bulldozed and carried to the dump and then dumped there, and what a nightmare.
Wait a minute, we need to look at that. And they're like, oh no, it's fine. We can go look at it.
It's right there. There you go. It's a charred bone, some wood.
Oh God.
All that remained of the fire scene was a handful of grainy, poorly exposed photographs taken by volunteer firefighters. Yet the prosecution's experts claimed that they could discern exactly how the fire started. The panel found the forensic evidence against Ed was a collection of, quote, old wives' tales that researchers had disproved in the 2 decades since the trial. They saw no evidence that gasoline was poured on the floor. The fire in the shed quickly mushroomed into intense burning, known as flashover or full involvement. This occurs when heat and gas build until an entire room or building explodes in flames. After the intense damage caused by flashover, determining how a fire started can be difficult. During the 80s, fire experts didn't fully understand flashover and certainly didn't know it could make an accidental fire look like arson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a bunch in those articles. There's a bunch more information about that. I was like totally geeking out. Like,
yeah,
I am now, you guys, a total fire expert. So
bring her on. Put her on the panel.
Yeah, if you want to read more about it, go to those articles because it's crazy. Like how much they have figured out by watching things burn, and really interesting.
By actually
studying
science
fire. Yeah.
What?
Wild.
They didn't just watch Backdraft like I did in the 90s and be like, wait, stay away. The thing will suck.
That's
Put
right.
it out there.
Yeah,
So every child of the 90s knows. Don't open that door.
Nope, don't do it. Later research would show that accidental fires can burn as fast as arson fires, sometimes faster. An accidental fire on a couch can send a room into flashover in less than 3 minutes.
Wowee.
If you don't ever want to sleep again in your life, think about that.
Seriously, just put that on the pile of shit that makes it impossible to sleep in modern America. Wow.
Yep, your whole room can be exploding in fire. Anyway, night-night, guys.
I know, seriously.
The panel couldn't find evidence that Ed had locked the kids inside the shed. Arson experts testified in the first trial that they believed that the shed doors were closed because of the burn patterns on the door hinges. But the shed was so thoroughly burned that it would be impossible to determine any real information from a piece of scorched door hinge. A neighbor testified at trial that he had a very good view of Ed's yard from his patio during the fire and clearly remembered seeing the shed door open.
No kidding.
It's almost impossible that the fire could have achieved flashover so quickly, which everyone who's looked into the case agrees it did, unless the door was open, giving the fire a steady source of air.
Right.
The panel also couldn't find any evidence that Ed had rendered the children unconscious. One of the articles talked about how if you are succumbing to monoxide poisoning, in the article they were talking about how the experts were saying that if you're alive in a fire, you're going to be crawling on your belly to get out, which makes sense, I guess. And so the boys would have been found on their stomachs.
Right.
But these new experts were saying, well, that's not necessarily true. And if they were alive and breathing, they would be trying to get out, however, and it wouldn't take long. They would breathe in the carbon monoxide and then they'd just fall, however. These boys happened to fall on their backs, but the people can be found in all sorts of ways. There's not
totally.
like one rule.
Especially if you're a kid. We know to get low, but a little 6, 7, 8-year-old would not
if they're
know.
panicking.
Yeah, they would just start to run or whatever.
Right.
Totally. Whoa.
The panel believed because of the amount of burning in the shed, along with the demolition of the scene, it was nearly impossible to know how the fire started. One expert said the likeliest scenario is an accidental fire started by the kids near the door. The door was open, but the flames may have prevented escape. Trapped in a windowless shed, they had no way out. Before long, the fumes overwhelmed them. The panel called this case one of the most inept arson investigations they had ever seen. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals agreed and overturned Ed Graf's original conviction.
Wow.
I know.
I did not see that coming.
I know. This story.
I don't like him. Put him back in jail anyway.
I mean, I think we can all agree that he's not a nice person.
I don't have a good feeling about him.
Nope. So Ed's successful appeal proved that Texas was serious about correcting past forensic errors, but his story was far from over.
Oh my God.
Prosecutors in Waco were not convinced of his innocence. They felt they had enough evidence to reconvict and believed Ed was responsible for the deaths of his stepsons.
What? This system, man. It's just...
It's wild.
Gives me a stomachache.
In October 2014, Ed went back to court to be tried once again for murder. Nearly 30 years had passed since the last trial. Some witnesses had been children in the 80s and were now grown adults with kids of their own. Other witnesses were no longer alive. Memories changed or were forgotten altogether. For the most part, the prosecution and defense cases were the same. One side painting Ed as a monster, willing to kill his stepsons for money, while the defense said he loved his boys and this was all just a tragic accident. They also relied heavily on science, trying to get the jury to understand why the fire was an accident and not arson. The downside of this defense is that it was incredibly reliant on technical jargon, which can be very difficult to sell to juries.
Right. They want that cool emotional stuff, like give me the good sadness and stuff.
Right. And the anger and the jealousy and all of that's very interesting.
Yep.
The defense faced another significant hurdle. It couldn't mention Ed's previous trial, or the 26 years that he'd spent in prison, or the fact that the original conviction had been overturned.
You're kidding me.
No. The judge thought that would bias the jury.
Oh my God. And they're looking at this like 70-year-old dude and talking about its 8-year-old kids. And they're like,
Right.
I don't know.
Yep. This decision led to bizarre scenarios in which witnesses were asked to compare their present-day statements to previous sworn testimony of unstated origins. Even more strangely, several now deceased or otherwise absent witnesses had their testimony reread for the courts by their lawyers, by the defense lawyers often.
Oh my God. That is so strange. Can
So
you imagine
strange.
preparing for that case? Just being like,
Could you imagine
okay,
being the jury and being like, what is going
happening?
on? Like, why are we playing this game?
I accidentally started watching that Amazon show. I think it's called The Boys, about the superheroes.
Oh, accident. I like that one.
No, well, and I started watching it, but I accidentally started on episode 6.
Oh, Lord.
And so I was like, wow, that's really brave of them to just jump into this story at this point, you know, and I assumed they were going to start working backwards and like revealing what they were talking about. And I was like, what a strange first episode. And then I watched another and I was like, this show's really good. I wonder when they're going to tell us about all this stuff I don't know yet. And then and then episode 9, I was like, motherfucker. I just watched the last 3 episodes of it. I loved it. I was so excited. I was like, this show's great. It's really fun. And then by then I already knew everything that happened. So I was like, God.
Oh, that's so funny.
I know.
When you said you accidentally watched it, I thought you meant it was an accident. Like you wish you had never done it. I was like, really? I really liked it.
No, I thought it was a blast. Yeah, I was really happy to watch it. But yeah.
It would have been better maybe to start at the beginning. These poor jury.
I know exactly how those jury members felt.
It's like starting at episode 6.
Yep. I can understand the struggles of many people as a result.
Yep. So these witnesses tended to be for the defense, and their words were far less emotionally resonant than those of the witnesses who appeared in person, as you can imagine.
Yes.
So by all accounts, by the end of the first week of trial, it was hard to predict which way the jury would go.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
But the prosecution had one ace up its sleeve.
What?
In April 2014, with a trial date for Ed just weeks away, the district attorney for the case began receiving letters from a prisoner named Fernando Herrera. He was a new cellmate of Ed's, and according to his letters, Ed had confessed to murdering Joby and Jason.
What? Good. I was starting to feel bad for him.
Describing the crime in astonishing detail, Herrera would become a crucial witness in his prosecution against Ed. He would testify at trial that he had come forward with this information without any expectation of reward. On the stand, Herrera demonstrated an almost encyclopedic understanding of the prosecution's case against him.
Wow.
But at times he seemed to depart from one version of events and then reverse himself or be interrupted by the prosecutor in the midst of an apparent detour.
Mm-hmm.
And on an occasion, Herrera's testimony matched previous testimony verbatim.
Of his own testimony or other people's testimony?
The previous trial's testimony.
Wow. Oh, I gotcha.
Quote, "What Herrera has to say is what the state wishes they could prove but can't," the defense team would argue, noting apparent holes in his story.
Mm-hmm.
Much of the information in Herrera's description of the confession was readily available elsewhere. In his testimony and in correspondence, Herrera told authorities dozens of details that were either on the website for the former prosecutor, in articles about the case online, or in original trial transcripts and documents that Ed's legal team says he kept amongst his personal belongings in jail.
Damn it!
Which would be easily accessible to other inmates.
Uh-huh.
There was one final problem with Ed's alleged confession. It was incredibly recent. Ed had maintained his innocence throughout the lead-up to his first trial and for at least 25 years afterward. The supposed confession to Herrera was made in county jail, where Ed was waiting for a new trial that could potentially set him free, scheduled just weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
No other inmate had made such a claim from the entire time that Ed was locked up in prison.
You're really messing with my emotions on this one.
Dude, I'm telling you what. We'll talk about it. We're almost there, and then we'll talk about it.
God.
As the trial ended and the jury began its deliberation, no one knew what the outcome would be.
I'm going to vomit. Oh, you just did vomit.
I know. Gross.
So I just picturing you getting so nervous to reveal the jury's decision that you actually just vomited.
With it. The jury struggled to come up with a unanimous verdict, asking the judge, quote, "How many jurors does it take to reach a unanimous verdict?" They were at a standstill of 10-2 and would like some guidance. At this point, it became evident that 10 people wanted a quick, most likely guilty verdict, and there were 2 holdouts that were adamant that Ed was not guilty.
Wow.
The judge ordered them to keep working. Then something shocking happened. 11 hours into deadlocked deliberations, when it seemed very possible that the trial would end in a hung jury, Ed Graf pleaded guilty to murdering his 2 adopted sons.
Can you please get out of town? Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you.
What?
Yep.
I think I've lost the ability to use my forehead. I'm scrunching it so hard.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why? What is happening?
The plea made no sense. It appeared that Ed was admitting guilt in exchange for virtually nothing.
What?
At 62 years old, Ed was left with more than 30 years to go on his sentence. According to prosecutors, he would be eligible for parole in a year, but it wasn't likely to be granted. Had the scientific evidence been wrong? Was he guilty after all? Had his conscience finally got the better of him? It turns out, what Ed and his attorneys knew, and the district attorney apparently did not, is that there is a loophole in Texas's I guess I've never said that word out loud.
I don't know. Why would you? Why would you be talking about what Texas possesses? You know? Texas's. It turns out, what Ed and his attorneys knew, and the district attorney apparently did not, is that there is a loophole in Texas's parole law for capital crimes that took place prior to 1987. I don't like where this is going at all.
In such cases, parole must be granted automatically when an inmate's time is served and his credited time for good behavior add up to his sentence. Ed was released 8 days after pleading guilty to murder.
You're kidding me.
Nope.
Oh my God. You have some good-ass lawyers. Please find out their names just in case.
Right?
Wow.
What made Ed's release even crazier was that the jury had reached a guilty verdict on murder just as the plea deal was being entered.
I'm going to give myself a Charlie horse from shaking my head too hard.
The bailiff took the verdict and was waiting outside the door of the courtroom to hand it to the judge as the plea deal was being entered. Can you believe that?
What?
Yep. And there was a lot about, so when he was first tried, he was found guilty and his sentence was life without parole. This plea deal allowed him to, they put a time on it of 60 years. That was the deal. Which his defense lawyers knew about this loophole. And they knew that if they agreed, if they got the prosecutors to agree to 60 years, that Ed would have enough time built up to be released.
In 8 days.
Right. So if the jury had found him guilty, it would have reset his previous sentence of life.
Oh my God.
Isn't that just the craziest thing you've ever heard?
I really want to know the names of those lawyers. I'm not kidding, because that is some fine work, gentlemen.
Seriously. I've been researching this story for a while. I'm speechless. I just can't even get over it.
I can't either. And I'm sorry, I just assumed that they were gentlemen. I meant that in the court, like, barrister way.
Right.
Not ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Yeah. God.
Claire said that she did not learn about the mandatory release until after the plea. I mean, it doesn't sound like anybody knew except for the defense. Quote, "How can a twice convicted double child murderer who's lied for that period of time and then confessed to brutally burning my young sons alive, how can this happen?" she said. "I just feel that it was a travesty of justice to the victims and families."
That is the understatement of all of time. Like, it is I can't. God, to lose your children in such a horrible way and then to get loopholed into not getting justice, there's a special place in hell for those lawyers. And I hope to solicit their services before they go to hell.
Right.
I mean, I don't. But if I need to, I hope it's before they go to hell, because they're going straight to hell.
So after the tragedy of losing her sons and seeing her ex-husband convicted of murder, Claire pieced her life back together in a Dallas suburb. She's remarried and says it's been a happy relationship. She continued to teach elementary school until her retirement a few years ago. The son Claire had with Ed is grown now. He's changed his name and disowned his biological father.
My God.
He hasn't seen Ed in more than a decade.
Wow.
Ed was released on parole as part of the super intensive supervision program, which included a GPS monitoring, like ankle bracelet,
Right.
To help keep track of him. He was released from that program in February of 2018, but will remain, just in that like super intensive supervision, but will remain on parole until 2048.
I mean, it's something, but good God.
Yep. There you go, guys.
Wow.
So did they do it?
Yes.
Or did they not do it?
Did it?
I don't know. I thought for sure he did it. And then reading about it, I don't know. They were talking a lot about how people plead guilty all the time to crimes they didn't do to get their plea. So he was sitting there watching the jury deliberate, and he's like, "Oh man, they're going to find me guilty. I got to do this so I can get out. Like, I can either get out or I can go back forever." You know, so I don't know. He was not a good guy. And I'm sure of that. Not a nice man. But did he murder those boys? I don't know.
My most compelling evidence toward him having done it was the life insurance.
Yeah.
And, you know, that he'd already committed fraud, and then he took out these life insurance policies on his children. And I just always think it's weird when people take out life insurance policies on their children.
Right. I also wonder about if the boys had been alive, like awake in the shed, they would be screaming for help if they were stuck. Nobody witnessed that or heard that, but also nobody witnessed Ed dragging the boys into the shed. Man, I don't know. I do know that the arson evidence was bogus and shouldn't have been. Probably he should have never been brought to trial in the first place. Right. Because that's all they had on him was that bogus evidence.
In a shed in a hole. God. Oh, I'm mystified. I am mystified.
I know. But man, ups and downs. And you read some of the headlines for this story. Like before I really knew the whole story, I was reading headlines and it was like so sensationalized. You know, that Ed said that he thought he should kill his wife and his sister too, which he never actually said. That's what the informant, the snitch or whatever, that's what he said that Ed said. Oh, but that the headline was fully like, these are the words he said. I was reading that like, oh my God.
Yep.
I can't believe like he got on stand. I should have murdered you too. No, he didn't say that. That's how I was thinking it was going to end. It was all sorts of jumbled up.
Oh, wow, man. Wow.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? I don't know. I mean, I feel like he did it, but what does everyone think?
Yeah. I mean, if he didn't do it, this is just the shittiest luck for him to be like, to do all of that stuff beforehand and like get the insurance and send it out the day before.
Precisely. Yes.
Like, what shitty timing.
Yeah. And I know that those things happen. There's lots of cases like that where people, it just is really, really horrendous timing. And you couldn't possibly believe that it was just a coincidence. But sometimes horrible, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then, dang it.
A few days ago when I was reading through this, I was thinking how crazy it was that you'd have that life insurance on young children. And then I was thinking, well, Ryan started a new job about a year ago. And I know part of that was he was offered life insurance on me.
Yeah.
And so I texted him, I was thinking about texting him. Do we have life insurance on the boys? And then I was like, I'm not sending that text because God forbid if something happens to them.
Oh my God, right? And then they take your phone and they're like, bing, bing, bing.
I mean, it was just out of curiosity. Like, am I over here judging this guy for taking insurance out on his kids when I have two young boys that have life insurance? And it turns out, Ryan couldn't remember either, but we think that it just sort of came with, it was like family life insurance. But
right, sure.
Anyway.
Yep. Well, and I think even when you're dealing with misunderstandings in life, especially like on a professional level with people who don't know you as well, as your friends do, I've had those cases where, you send an email and then people misread it or misunderstand it. And then you realize to explain what you actually meant will make you seem crazy. And so you just sort of have to like take the hit. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
You're like,
how do I can't talk my way out of this.
Right.
Yeah,
you've got me one way or another. One way or another, I look like a bozo. And so you just put that on like a macro scale.
Right.
And you're just a bad person.
Right. You're trying to explain your way. Like, no, okay, so I am a dick, 100%.
Yes.
But.
Right.
I can't explain how all this fell into place like it did.
I didn't hug my wife because I'm just not an emotional person. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know.
I think he did it.
Yeah. Well, I hope he didn't so that he's not,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, that would be the best case scenario. Best case scenario was that it was just a horrible accident and he didn't do the most heinous thing you could possibly do and then get away with it in a really freaky deaky way. But I don't know if if you hear horse clops or whatever, it's probably horses, not zebras. I'm going to screw that quote up every time I say it, but
no, I think you nailed it. That's exactly right. When you hear horse clops, it's probably the horses.
It's probably horses, not zebras. Those poor babies, regardless. That poor mom.
God, the pictures of the boys too. They're so close in age that they might as well be twins. And I'll post the pictures, but they're like little T-ball outfits. And I just, again, like I really had to just whoop. Yeah, that's me shutting down.
Compartmentalize. Yeah,
these are words on a screen, and I'm so sorry. No, I can't even. I was going to apologize to the mom. I really.
Yeah.
Like. 100% my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So let's stop talking about it.
Nope. Let's go deep into how that feels for you. No, it's unfathomable. It is
I'm really so sorry for her.
so sorry on every level and forever. She's just not going to have the peace that she deserves. And that's very sad. I am glad she's remarried and happy, though.
Me too.
Good for her for finding the strength to move on, because I would just do drugs. I'm positive, which is why I don't have children, because the likelihood of something happening to them, thus causing me to just do every drug, it's not worth it.
But she's one of those like total badasses, and
yes,
they were talking. One of the articles was saying how the Texas parole board were trying to decide if they could get Ed out of that like super intensive parole, and she campaigned and had like so many letters sent to them that they finally were like, okay, enough, we get you, we hear you, we'll keep him on for another year.
Good for her.
She was just like, nope,
good for her,
I'm gonna make sure he's as miserable as he can be. And really, she never, that's probably where I would lean if I was going to guess if he was guilty. I would, she just seemed so sure of herself. And immediately within the next day after this happened, she was like, nope, you did this.
No kidding. It's very telling.
Yeah. So.
Damn.
Yeah. Crazy. It's another story. Like, how have we not heard about this one? I could not believe it. Do I just live in a hole? I think I know about all this true crime.
Isn't it just the craziest thing? I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about this sometimes. I probably listen to, 3,000 true crime episodes or so. Just
at least, yeah.
A really embarrassing amount of true crime.
Right. Well, like podcasts, Datelines,
ID.
Forensic Files. I mean,
yes.
It's, and I'm still finding stories that...
It's remarkable.
Are crazy and worth talking about. And they don't get out there.
I know, you're like, there's got to be, 200 bad stories. Nope. Just zillions. Billions.
Yeah. And this one it's like Evil Lives Here or whatever. It has a show. I didn't have a chance to watch it, but there's a couple shows about this one.
I love Evil Lives Here. That's actually one of my favorites.
Well, good. Go check it out.
I will.
They have one.
Spooky.
Yeah. Anyway.
Good job. Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good night. Goodbye.
I think the businesses that I have, we have September hit, and then boom, we got a bunch of patrons.
Fist pump.
You guys, that's so amazing.
It is so amazing.
I'm so excited.
It's so amazing. And I haven't really had time. I've had the busiest week of my adult life, I think. I just, the energy is good. Pisces moon or whatever, I don't know, but just abundance. I'm very grateful, but very busy. And then I would every once in a while have the time, check my email and see those coming through and get a little yay! It just gives you a little boost in your day that you need, that you have no idea how. It's fucking great. It feels so good, right?
Yeah, you guys are amazing. So let's do a couple shout outs.
Lay 'em on me.
I want to give a big thank you to Emily S.
Yay, Emily.
You're the best, Emily. Thank you so much to Martha H.
Yay, Martha.
I love that name.
I was just going to say the same thing. It is a really good name.
Thank you to Linda I.
Thank you, Linda.
A big thank you to Hunter G.
Thank you, Hunter, who also made us corn art this week.
You did. I know. You guys are killing us with the corn art. It's one of those jokes that I thought was really funny, and I love when it
makes
resonates.
It translates. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. As I was telling it, and I almost cut it out of the episode altogether because I'm like, I don't know if it'll translate. I don't know if people understand. I was picturing Lucy in the Peanuts. Her psychotherapy booth or whatever. Where it was that with a corn cob just sitting in the middle of it in my mind. So
I think
thank
people
you
got
guys.
it.
Thank you so much.
Big shout out to Kylie G.
Thank you, Kylie G.
And Shanna M.
Thank you, Shanna.
And last but certainly not least, Tina H.
Go, Tina. You rule.
You rule. Everybody rules. You guys rule. If you want to sign up, go on over to Patreon. We weren't searchable. for a while.
Right.
So if you tried to search us and couldn't find us, it was because I checked a box or something silly.
Sadie checked a box that made us not safe for work, so...
That means you just can't find us at all.
It's like there should be a thing that pops up when you search for us that says, "Are you at work?" And then you can just click no, and then it'll let you find us or something.
It should just be a thing that pops up that says,
stupid.
"This is a true crime podcast, and we will talk about murder."
Yeah.
So if you put your headphones on, you dummy.
Yeah, there's swears and horrible things. So yeah, don't blast it for your neighbor.
Right. Don't make it so you can't find us at all.
It's really strange. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-mm. But it just made me think of my one business. It wasn't a business at all. I'm just telling you a story because I'm selfish. I want to start some legislation against people playing music at public beaches.
Oh no.
Like, what is that? So if you're under the age of 25, I get it. Like, you're partying, you're playing top 40, drinking White Claw. Like, that happens a lot. And I'm like, that's annoying. But you're a kid. Whatever. You haven't learned yet. There were these, 60-year-olds. And the beach was so windy. And I was tired. I hadn't slept super well the night before. So I was like, I'm going to lay down and take a nap in the sun. It's one of my favorite things to do. And fucking 50,000 decibels. They put the boombox, faced it towards us. It was very windy. So the wind just carried the sweet, sweet sounds of Sarah McLachlan straight into my fucking ear holes and into my brain.
No.
And it's like water torture.
Right.
Like, why would you think that I want to listen to Sarah McLachlan at the beach?
Seriously. Like,
You know
don't
what I
assume
mean?
anybody wants to listen to your music anywhere
No!
ever.
It's really strange to me.
That's really strange.
Isn't that strange? I don't like to choose music in the car because it's too much pressure.
Right.
In my own car, let alone on a beach with, 60 other people.
Right. That's crazy.
So if you do that,
Don't.
unfollow this I'm just kidding. It's fine.
Just think about it, maybe. Put your earpods in. Is this safe for beach? No. Would you
No.
play this podcast on the beach for everyone to hear? No.
Would you
Same goes for your...
Sarah McLachlan for your Lilith Fair
Dixie
1997. Exactly. Your
Oh, wait.
compilation.
I think they're just like the chicks now.
The
right?
chicks. Yes. We
Yeah.
don't want to hear your Liz Fair. We don't want to hear your Erykah Badu. I mean, we do want. I would rather hear Erykah Badu, but who else was at Lilith Fair?
Spin Doctor.
We don't want to hear your Spin Doctors. That is my number one least favorite band. I really
Really?
don't. Yes.
That's funny.
I really don't want to hear your Spin Doctors on the beach. Little Miss, No. No. It's really weird to me. It's really weird.
All right. Anything else?
No, and I'm glad I got that out there because that is important.
God,
And people
it really
need to be
is, man.
thinking about it. I'm just kidding.
It's one of those things I've never thought about, but it... Yeah.
Well, because then there's at least one person, but probably more like 7 people just sitting there like, oh my God, how can I go tell them to turn down the music? I'm just not that assertive.
Right.
No way. And we're
No, I'd rather
neighbors
die.
with these people. Yeah, I just don't want to. Excuse me. This sucks for everyone except for you. So maybe get a worldview and understand that there are other people in the world. I don't, It's so. That's it.
There you go. Let's get out of here.
I love you guys. So in the meantime, if you want to tell me that people have actual problems in this world that don't that don't include sitting on a beach,
boxes.
the discomfort of sitting on a beach while someone plays music, I'm aware of that. But come on over to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and tell us there at They Will Kill. Our website is theywillkill.com. And you can gmail us at theywillkillpodcast@gmail.com.
Hey, guess what?
What?
We're up to like 69 Twitter followers now, you guys.
Sadie really worked on it this week. She really put in a concerted
Yep.
effort. Boosted that right up to 69.
It's
from
you know how it goes.
51.
It's a slog to get people to follow you. So if you've got a Twitter account, just do me a favor so I don't have to like go follow random people until they follow us back.
Yeah.
Or not. It doesn't matter. I'm just working on it. It's my project.
Yeah. I looked at Twitter this weekend too. I'm trying to warm up to it. I'm trying to familiarize myself.
I know. I actually am starting to figure out how it works. I'm getting it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting there. Rate, review, subscribe. You guys have been reviewing us lately. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, AJ Bergans, for your music. He has a couple new songs out. I think he's been releasing them like slowly to build the momentum.
Yeah.
So go check him out on Spotify. And remember...
Totally unprepared.
Don't play your boomboxes on the beach, you guys.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is some words to live by. Keep that shit to yourself. Keep it to yourself.
That's what headphones are for. We love you so much.
We love you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.